All right, so on to the main act of our general membership meeting, our very special guest speaker. He is a retired Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Guam and has served as Senator from the 28th to the 31st Guam Legislature, where he served as Vice Speaker in the 31st Legislature. He earned his BA in Political Science and Economics from Claremont Men's College in 1972 and received his Juris Doctor from the University of Santa Clara Law in 1975. He has always been involved in civic and community organizations, including Pa'akautanu Sanctuary, Inc., and the Manikan Memorial Foundation, as well as the Make-A-Wish Foundation, just to name a few. He is the second elected public auditor for Guam, serving in this capacity since 2018. Members and guests, please join me in welcoming the Honorable B.J. Cruz, Public Auditor for Guam.
I'm not a candidate. Anyway, when I got the invitation, I was trying to figure out exactly what you wanted me to talk about, because I thought I said everything the last time that I spoke here was that go to www.opaguam.org and you'll find everything you need to know. You'd be surprised what we have on that website. And on that website, we have all the minutes and hearings, committee meetings of all the agencies. So if you want to know what's happening, why the hospital board did something, why another board did something, it's on our website. We also have all the procurement appeals. You can listen to all the hearings. If you want to know what happened on all the recent cases that have been making the news, it's on the website. You can listen to the hearing itself because it's on there. I recently got, I don't know if he's a member, but he really should become a member. He's a young businessman. He just started up a new business. His name is Sam Kim. And if you've been following him, he's been doing some really interesting articles about our office. He's been doing what I recommended to you or implored you to do last year, and that's read the audits. He reads them, he analyzes them, and he provides his take on it. And I wish I could hire him because he's able to distill the audits from the technical jargon that I keep trying to break my staff of to English, understandable to English. And besides that, he also sends me recommendations. And he sent me an interesting one. You guys were talking about having a forum. He sent recently a question: does your office have all the promises of all the candidates, and will you do an audit to see if they accomplished them? I wrote back to him, I said, very, very good question. No, actually, I'm sorry to say no. And I'm not sure, and one, we haven't gotten that mandate from the legislature to do it. But it would be an interesting thing to do. And so I posed it to my staff, and they all thought it was too political to be getting into that. And then I said to the staff, and can we do something else? Since we have so much bandwidth on our website, can we on our website gather all the political paraphernalia that gets hung on people's doors and published in newspapers and platforms and stuff, and be a repository, so that when if you want to go look at it, you have some place to go to. Anyway, that was just an idea. That's an aside. I thought maybe I'd open this meeting with good news, because everybody keeps thinking I'm sure that I'm always bringing bad news. We had the entrance conference for the FY25 government audit yesterday. And if they stay on schedule, we should be able to issue the 25 audit by November. And if we stay on schedule, I'll be able to do the entrance conference for the 26th in December, and hopefully by next June, we'll be back on track with everything on time. That is a big hope, but anyway, that is the plan for the next year on the GovGuam audit. On the 25 audits in the next 2 or 3 weeks, you'll be receiving, or you'll be seeing us issue a whole slew of the financial audits for all the component units in the GovGuam agencies. The reason they're so late is because the OPEC had not been agreed on between the EY national actuaries and the GovGuam actuaries. And they spent the last 60 days bickering about mortality rates and sample sizes and stuff. They finally came to an agreement last Friday, and we received the final numbers this weekend. All the final numbers were distributed to all the agencies just yesterday, or the day for yesterday, or yesterday. It was Tuesday was a holiday, Monday was a holiday. So they got them yesterday, so you should be getting all the 25 audits should be coming out as a group. But I really need for all of you to also be reading these audits and reading the audits that we've also issued already. The legislature is contemplating almost doubling the size of charter schools. But nobody's been reading the audits. Because if they were reading the audits, they realize that there are a couple of charter schools that have not issued their financial audits since '23. And they've been getting money for the last 3 years. But they want to expand it now. They want to have 12 charter schools. So if you're concerned about that, please make your collective voices known to the legislature. And also, if you would take the time to read some of the audits to try to determine whether or not they are fulfilling their intended purposes, and whether or not our children are actually being assisted. I'm not an educator, and I don't pretend to be, but I really am concerned about the fact that the standing of our students were so behind, but even in GDOE. And so you really need to read the audits, see in the MD&A, all that information. Because you need to be heard on whether or not it's a good idea to double the number of charter schools, or whether or not we should do something to bolster what's going on at GDOE And also with GDOE, you probably should have your voices heard as to whether or not it's financially and economically sound to continue to have as many schools as we have. I know in the past when we had 35,000, 36,000 students in the educational system every year, having a school in every village was a good idea and it was a must. But we're down to about 27,000 now in the educational system, but we still have the same number of schools. Well, we did close LBJ, but people are very adamant about not doing it. And also, I think all of you now know how much it's costing to build high schools, and whether or not we need to have as many as we've had in the past, and whether or not we might be or should consider consolidating the student bodies. But that's a DOE issue. But I really do think that as taxpayers, you should have your voices heard on whether or not you think those things should be addressed. Because getting a bond to build a brand new high school that could cost $500 million over the next 30 years is something that you need to weigh your way in, because it's imperative that the community be heard on it. There are a lot of issues that I know all of you are interested in. There was a loud scream when the 24 audit came out for Gov Guam, and the fact that the compliance audit went from about 40 pages to 160 pages, and the findings went from 20 to 60 findings. Gov Guam fought the findings. In fact, they took almost 90 days. They received the compliance report January 6th, and it wasn't until April the 24th that they finally signed off and said, okay, these are all of our responses. But if you take the time to read the compliance report, you'll find that the young auditors that they were complaining about were correct when they were going through. People don't seem to understand that when you're doing an audit, and especially on the compliance audits for the federal reports, you're supposed to have everything in the file when the auditor comes. The auditor is not supposed to go and dig all around for it. Dig all around for it. But even comments that Gov Guam got made afterwards, because they kept saying, you had access to GFMIS, and if you needed questions, you just needed to ask. But we're even us at the office, when we do our compliance audits, our performance audits at the agencies, we're finding that when they come in and they very proudly present us with a thumb drive and say, this has everything that you're going to need for the audit, and we go in and look at it, then we write our audit and we explain to them, you don't have the eligibility here, you don't have the clearance here, and they go, oh yes, we have it. And they go, where? It's here. And I said, it's not supposed to be in the department. It's supposed to be in the file. Because when DOA makes the payment, it wants to know that it's making the payment to the right person. It may be making a medical payment, but like in Medicaid, it may be making a payment and they can see the invoice from the hospital or they see the invoice from the doctor, but they need to know that that doctor has been approved to receive Medicaid payments, that the hospital has been approved to receive Medicaid payments, and that has to be in the file. And when you ask them, they go, we have it. And they go, where? And then they go, oh, that's in his file, in his computer, that's in her computer, that's in his computer. And I'm going, but it wasn't in the file, and it wasn't in the file that you sent to us 4 months ago, proudly claiming this is everything that you're going to need for the audit. But they don't seem to realize that. And it's just a matter of record keeping. We're having the same problem with procurement. With procurement, those of you that have bids with the government, you know that the departments are supposed to have the procurement record maintained. I mean, it has to be every day. And that procurement file has to have everything that happened in that with that procurement. If any of the buyers went out and spoke to any of the any of the vendors that were bidding, that conversation needs to be memorialized in a memo in the file. Every phone call needs to be in the file. Every piece of correspondence you receive should be in the file. You can't have, let's meet afterwards and talk about it, because that meet afterwards needs to be memorialized in a memo and contained in the file. But to get them to realize that, what, really? I'm going, yes, the procurement record is everything that was done in and around and pertaining to this procurement. Every phone call. And they go, and though I don't want to really speak about an ongoing procurement protest, you'll remember, those of you that were at the summit that some of you underwrote or helped sponsor last year, I said to the departments, the procurement law may not be the most perfect thing. There isn't anything perfect, but it does have a structure in which to do things. And if you can comply with the structure, it does a good, it provides the intended purpose. But if you don't, then just admit it. If somebody, if an appellate comes forward and says the record of the procurement record wasn't kept, don't dig your heels in. Don't, make your hackles go up and pride and know we have everything, and then go through the whole trial and find out that indeed the record is not complete. Because then we'll have to side with the appellants, and the bid will have to be scrubbed, or just admit that you're wrong and cancel the bid, rebid it, cross your T's, dot your I's. Somebody yesterday said, well, can we do this? Can we instead adopt the FAR? And I said, we could, but you still need to be able to read and follow instructions. And so unless they do that, you're always going to have problems with procurement. And the other thing that we're having problems with procurement is something that I tried to remedy while I was still at the legislature. I mandated that there be training for procurement appeals. Procurement. There are 4 modules. He does some training for us, often does. But you need to be trained to be involved in procurement. And if you go through the records and we do the compliance reports for the agencies, you'd be surprised how many agency heads have not taken the procurement class. I see a few in here, but I would ask them if they finished all the modules and when they were doing procurement, but I won't. Because I see the names that attended the classes, and I'm shocked to see people on evaluation teams, people doing $1 million, tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars of procurement, and they've not been involved, or at least I haven't seen their certificates of completion of the training. And they're not supposed to be doing that. That's what's going on. And if you listen to the procurement appeals on our website, and you listen to the hearings, you'll hear us ask that question. And so, anyway, those are the kinds of issues that I wanted to present to all of you without getting specific. But if you have questions, I'd be willing to ask them and answer them. Anybody have any questions they want me to address, or something they think I should? Yes.
So you discovered a lot of impropriety in the audits. What is the process thereafter for criminal investigation and criminal charges?
Well, my office doesn't have the authority to prosecute. That responsibility is with the Attorney General.
So is there communication?
Yes, we send him copies of our audits, and he has spoken to us on a number of audits, and we provided him the information that he needs to all the evidence that we have in our files. We pointed them the questions that they need to be asking. They've brought actions on a couple of things. They've not brought actions on everything, but they've brought actions on some. On some of the regular findings of not criminal activity, but the findings, there's supposed to be a corrective action plan to address each one of the findings. And we do compliance reports from our office showing how many compliance reports, how many compliance reports, findings, and compliance, corrective action plans have been completed, or are still open, or have been closed because they've been addressed. Mr. Kim did a great article on that, where he, said over the last number of years, there's lots of findings that have not been closed. Compliance plans that have not been closed. And unless that's addressed, the mistakes will continue. And then also in the audits, we're also pointing out that some of the findings are repeat findings for the last 2 or 3 years. And until some time as they finally get their act together, we'll continue to find problems with them. So I've told my staff, all of them, I have a small staff, only about 16 people, auditors. But I've told them to read the compliance report and come up with ideas on what our audits are gonna be for next year. Because I really would like us to look and try to determine and see whether or not, in fact, the 5 programs that the compliance report pointed out was unauditable and they disclaimed, should have been disclaimed. With the ones that were qualified, if they were qualified, why they were qualified. Because we're doing an audit right now on something that 2 years ago was found to be a qualified program management problem that they had in one of the agencies. And we're finding that it was true. Whatever the EY auditors complained about that they made for the qualification was in fact true, because there just was no follow-up, there was no record keeping, there was no oversight. It's just an issue of, following instructions. A couple of years ago when I spoke here, I mentioned that Dan had sent me a complaint about one of the agencies. And when we did the report, sure enough, everything that he was complaining about was correct. But the agency had been given a mandate, had the authority to do certain things. They had some regulations, but they weren't complying with the regulations that they were given. I mean, in black and white. And I was very thankful that he pointed that out for us to look at. But I mean, and we can only just point it out, unfortunately. Yes.
Is there a way, so it appears there's a lot of pending items that have not been handled or addressed. Is there a way you can send a bulletin that these are items, so we as a community can send out letters to the AG's office saying, hey, these are pending items that has not been addressed or handled, or agencies, but if we had something as a community in the business, we could spread the word to send out letters. What you talked about, the schools, I already send out letters to the senators, and there are a lot of aides here that are staff members of senators, that the word just has to get out. So if we had a list of some sort, we can bombard the AG's office or bombard certain agencies to say, hey, do something, this is what's happening. So if there's a way you can guide us, and then we as a community can send out these letters hammering it down.
We have done some periodic reviews, but maybe what I can do is maybe just flash reports. Just last year, these still have not been addressed. But thank you for that suggestion, and that might be something that the office will do, rather than wait 3 years and then do wait a 3-year set, and it's just this. It becomes a 30-some audits that we're looking at, and they're not, and it comes out with a huge number. But if we did annually, maybe those of you in the community, maybe even the legislature might be able to handle something in smaller bites rather than in a huge compilation of the last 5 years. Yes?
A couple of years, excuse me. A couple of years ago when you spoke with us, one of the things that really surprised me was in your audits you found very few, if any, government agencies had standard operating procedures. And I wonder, over the last couple of years, has there been any movement to create standard operating procedures within these agencies?
Not really. There have been a few, but they're just, there should be several standard operating procedures. It can't just be, this is, one set. You have to have one for your procurement, you have to have one for HR, you have to have one for this, you know. And so, well, maybe that's another one that we'll have to look at to see. Because we did an audit to determine who had standard operating procedures. And they're supposed to be posted on their website. And then you try to find a website, if it's still up or if it's down, or if it's been hacked. It's hard to find them. But no, I think maybe making it bite-sized so that it's easier for all of you to read and see where the issues are, because it's huge when, you know, but when you do the annual GovBom audit, I mean, I was shocked when I got it last January when I saw the compliance report, and it had, you know, 60 some findings, and it was 156 pages. It was like, my God. But we had bright young auditors who with fresh eyes went in and looked at it, you know. And they were very, well, for lack of a better word, some would say very picky, but they should be. They have to be, because if the federal government was working, we'd really be in trouble. I mean, when we pointed out the problems at Homeland Security and Civil Defense a couple of years ago, I mean, in that one, our findings was that there was $42 million in question costs. And, you know, and the whole set of, you know, disclaimed, I mean, we almost couldn't audit what was going on in that. But the problem was the national government was taking FEMA apart nationally, so all the people that were following up on it aren't down on the local ones, so it's still continuing. And so that's where the problem is that some of the most egregious agencies, their federal agency, have been on the chopping block, and like GDOE, if things go as planned, will be completely dismantled and no longer exist in a couple of years. But they have billions and trillions of dollars of grants out there that haven't been followed up on because there are no people left to follow up on it. And then everybody gets complacent or realizes, ooh, there's nobody gonna be looking over my shoulder. Because there's nobody looking. And so that's where the problem is that there's no accountability from their federal counterpart for that. Back there.
Hello. An alternative proposition to procurement, I believe this is being done in the States, is they've outsourced the procurement process to, like, say, Amazon. So they provide the procurement packet to Amazon, and Amazon goes out and shops it for either the council or the township, and then effectively runs the procurement process, collects a fee. It sounds pretty simple, but as it comes from the OPA side, does that represent specific challenges that may not be on the surface for you guys?
I tried to do something like that a few years back when I was still in the legislature. And I will tell you where the biggest pushback's gonna come from. This organization. Because there is a procurement, actually it's mandated, and I issued a decision last year which didn't get much publicity, but I thought for sure I would be killed for. There is a local preference. I mean, but it's mandated. I mean, it really is. You can't consider anything else if there's a local company that makes a bid. But I just issued the decision and in that one case, but no one's brought it up otherwise. But if they read the opinions that we issue, they'll see that, and the reason for that was to try to protect the local industry. When I tried to do some procurement, doing, you know, either Amazon or it was having tying it up with some of the feds and procuring through them, I got companies, big companies here, that screamed. They wanted to be able to make the bids for the fire trucks here. And the chief of fire department brought the chief from Anderson to the hearing, and both of them said, but the fire truck that's on Guam is the same as the fire truck that is in Alaska. It has heated seats and air conditioning for both of us, and there's no difference. But if you make it through a local buyer, they get their commission. And they're able to send, and to the chief's credit, he was giving up trips to the States because the local vendors were willing to send him to the States to check the specs or check them. But I wish we could do that, some of that, but it really would hurt local distributors.
So just to provide clarity, I mean, couldn't our local vendors create an Amazon account and then bid on the procurement and with the local preference? So effectively, like Amazon or the outsourced vendor is running the procurement, not necessarily, or GSA is currently doing it, but effectively they're almost replacing GSA, but it's digitized, and then in terms of compliance for you guys, I mean, it wouldn't stop anybody from, say, a local dealership from creating an Amazon account and joining that procurement.
Yeah, no, it could, but I'm just saying that I think the other example when we tried to do it, the reason why I was doing it was the issue of WIC, the women went for the breast pumps. I could have gotten through a federal buyer for $16 for the breast pump. The cheapest one here was about $68, and it went up to $240,
Well,
depending on how, you know, the name brand. But I thought that the WIC program should have spent it better with the $16 and not give people the ability to be able, but, oh man. I almost got lynched in the legislature because of bringing up that idea, but if you guys come as and are willing to do that, make that suggestion from here, I'd be willing to look at it, and I think the legislature might also look at it, but I can tell you that unfortunately there is a downside.
Thank you.
Anybody else on this side? Yes. Great.
Should I wait for the mic? I think I'm on. So, sir, my basic question is a rhetorical question. What good is an audit if there's no accountability? And it just, for me, sitting here, just listening to everything that's said, it just appears that you do an audit. If the AG wants to do something about it, okay. If the governor wants to do something about it, okay. But if they don't, it appears nothing happens. I want to draw my experience with the military, because it seems like many times, you know, they look upon the military for systems that are operational, that seem to work, right? So I was a logistics officer for a major military command. And my responsibility was millions of dollars of equipment, supplies, and personnel. And it just happened to be at a time when I became the logistics officer that an inspection was coming down. And this inspection we knew what the inspection was. We knew the questions, we knew the answers. And I had 2 years to prepare for this. And it was a big deal because my neck was on the line. If we failed this inspection, we would be embarrassed, and I would lose my promotion, and would probably have to leave the military because of it. So there's the accountability there. I was assigned that task of making sure we passed. And so it seemed my entire time as the logistics officer was looking at the systems and making sure that we were doing everything right based upon the questions that this inspection team was going to ask, which they already had and we already had. We knew what they were going to ask. And so we we were studying for the exam. So when the exam came, there was a group of 10 people outside of the organization, and these people did this as a job. They went around the country inspecting units with the same questions and the same answers. And basically they went through the unit and they asked the questions from everybody. And maybe I think it took about a week. After a week, they put together the results of the inspection. We had a meeting, the general was there, and he listened to what the inspection team had to say. And everybody was like, oh my God, you know, here it is. The results are coming out. You know, are we going to pass or are we going to fail as a unit? And for me, my stress level was so high because if we failed that inspection, it was on me as the logistics officer. The good news is we passed. But why couldn't we have something like that in Guam, where we have agencies and someone comes in and says, okay, in order for this organization to function properly, it needs to do this, 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 and that. And then periodically, an organization like yours would come in and ask those questions. And if they're not doing it, then it's on the head of that government agency or the governor or whoever is the department head. For me, I think that system works because we're constantly preparing for that test, making sure that our systems are working at 100% every day, because we're worried that if we fail, we're not doing our job, we're not doing the mission, and the whole organization is, you know, visible as a failure. So anyway, that's, you know, I'm looking at it from a military perspective. I think if we had a system like that in Guam, I think things would work because we would hold people accountable. We would have a name of that individual for that organization, and if they fail their test or an inspection or an audit, boom, they're done.
I wish that were the way it is. It's not. We've issued audits that have pointed out who were the guilty parties, or at least who, and they're still there.
Spinning our wheels then.
Yeah, unfortunately. I don't know. We can only point it out, and you make your decisions in other ways. There's a different way of being able to get the accountability that is needed. I see the president.